First Chronicles. The first book of Chronicles is the first half of a single book that was divided into two parts, First and Second Chronicles. Because together they were too long to fit on one scroll, these two books retell the history of Israel from a slightly different viewpoint than that of Samuel and Kings, although many of the same stories are repeated. King David is the most important person in the book of First Chronicles. He is the one who made Jerusalem the center for the worship of the Lord God and who made sure the Lord was worshipped in the proper way. David is also honored as the founder of the temple, even though it was his son Solomon who actually built it. Much of First Chronicles is made up of lists that trace the descendants of Adam to the time of King Saul. 1-9, after reporting how Saul died 10, the rest of the book, 11-29, focuses on King David, and these chapters can be divided into four parts. The first part, 11-12, tells how they became king and made Jerusalem his capital city. This part also includes information about David's warriors and military officers. The second part, 13-16, describes how David moved the sacred chest to its new home in Jerusalem. The third part, 17-20, includes events during his rule, and the final part, 21-29, describes his preparations for building the Lord's temple and his instructions to his son Solomon about the proper worship of the Lord. In First Chronicles, David is used as an example of someone who faithfully worships and obeys the Lord. At the end of David's rule, he praises the Lord in front of everyone in Israel and says, "I praise you forever, Lord. You are the God our ancestor Jacob worshipped. Your power is great, and your glory is seen everywhere in heaven and on earth. You are king of the entire world, and you rule with strength and power." 29:10b to 12a. Descendants of Adam until the time of King Saul. Chapter 1. The descendants of Adam. This is also told in Genesis 5:1-32, 10:1-32, 11:10-32. Adam was the father of Seth, and his descendants were Enosh, Kenan, Mahalalel, Jared, Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech, and Noah, who had three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Japheth was the father of Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshech, and Tiras, and they were the ancestors of the kingdoms named after them. Gomer was the ancestor of Ashkenaz, Riphath, and Togarmah. Javan was the ancestor of Elishah, Tarshish, Kittim, and Dodanim. Ham was the father of Ethiopia, Egypt, Put, and Canaan, and they were the ancestors of the kingdoms named after them. Ethiopia was the ancestor of Seba, Havilah, Sabta, Rama, and Sabteka. Rama was the ancestor of Sheba and Dedan. Ethiopia was also the father of Nimrod, the world's first mighty warrior. Egypt was the ancestor of Ludim, Anamim, Lehabim, Naphtuhim, Pathruzim, Casluhim, and Caphtorim, the ancestor of the Philistines. Canaan's eldest son was Sidon. His other son was Heth. Canaan was also the ancestor of the Jebusites, the Amorites, the Girgashites, the Hivites, and Archites, the Sinites, the Arvadites, the Zemarites, and the Hamathites. Shem was the ancestor of Elam, Ashur, Arphaxad, Lud, Aram, Uz, Phul, Gether, and Meshech. They were the ancestors of the kingdoms named after them. Arphaxad was Shelah's father and Eber's grandfather. Eber named his first son Peleg because in his time, the earth was divided into three tribal regions. Eber's second son was Joktan, the ancestor of Almodad, Sheleph, Hazarmaveth, Jerah, Hadoram, Uzal, Tikla, Ebar, Abimael, Sheba, Ophir, Havilah, and Jobab. Shem's descendants included Arphaxad, Shelah, Eber, Peleg, Reu, Serug, Nahor, Terah, and Abram, later renamed Abraham. Abraham's family. This is also told in Genesis 25 1 to 4, 12 to 16. Abraham was the father of Isaac and Ishmael. Ishmael had 12 sons who were born in the following order: Nebaioth, Kedar, Abir, Mibsam, Mishama, Duma, Massa, Hadad, Tema, Jetur, Naphish, and Kedema. Abraham and his slave woman Keturah and 6 sons: Zimnan, Joksan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua. Joksan was the father of Sheba and Dedan. Midian was the father of Ephah, Epher, Hanok, Abida, and Eldah. Esau's family. This is also told in Genesis 36 1 to 14. Abraham's son Isaac was the father of Esau and Jacob. Esau was the father of Eliphaz, Reuel, Jeush, Jalam, and Korah. Eliphaz was the father of Teman, Omar, Zephi, Gatam, Kenaz, Timnah, and Amalek. Reuel was the father of Nahath, Zerah, Shammah, and Mitzah. The first Edomites and their kings. This is also told in Genesis 36 20 to 43. Sair was the father of Rotan, Shobal, Gibeon, Anah, Dishon, Ezer, and Dishan. Rotan was the father of Hori and Homam. Rotan's sister was Timnah. Shobal was the father of Alvan, Manahath, Ebar, Shephi, and Onam. Gibeon was the father of Aiah and Anah. Anah was the father of Dishon and the grandfather of Hemdan, Eshban, Ithran, and Cheran. Ezer was the father of Bilhan, Zavan, and Jachan. Dishan was the father of Uz and Aran. Before kings ruled in Israel, Bela, son of Beor, ruled the country of Edom from its capital of Dinhabah. After Bela's death, Jobab, son of Zerah from Bozrah, became king. After Jobab's death, Husham from the land of Teman became king. After Husham's death, Hadad son of Bedad became king and ruled from Avith. Earlier, Bedad had defeated the Midianites in the territory of Moab. After Hadad's death, Samlah from Masrekah became king. After Samlah's death, Shaul from the town of Rehoboth on the river Euphrates became king, and after Shaul's death, Baal-Hanan, son of Akbor, became king. After Baal-Hanan's death, Hadad ruled from Pai. His wife was Mehetabel, the daughter of Matred and granddaughter of Mezahab. The Edomite clans were Timnah, Alva, Zetheth, Oholibama, Ela, Pinon, Kenaz, Teman, Mibzar, Magdiel, and Ephraim. Chapter 2. The descendants of Judah. Jacob was the father of 12 sons: Reuben, Simon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Dan, Joseph, Benjamin, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. Judah and his Canaanite wife Beshua had 3 sons, Onan, and Shelah, but the Lord had put to death because he disobeyed and did what the Lord hated. Judah and his daughter-in-law Tamar also had 2 sons, Perez and Zerah. Perez was the father of Hezron and Hamul. Zerah was the father of Zimri, Ethan, Heman, Calcol, and Darda. Arkan, who was a descendant of Zerah and the son of Carmi, caused trouble for Israel because he kept for himself things that belonged only to the Lord. Ethan's son was Azariah, the ancestors of King David. Hezron was the father of Jerahmeel, Ram, and Caleb. Ram was the father of Aminadab and the grandfather of Nahshon, a tribal leader of Judah. Nahshon's descendants included Salmon, Boaz, Obed, and Jesse. Jesse had 7 sons who were born in the following order: Eliab, Abinadab, Shimea, Nathanael, Radai, Ozem, and David. Jesse also had two daughters, Zeruiah and Abigail. Zeruiah was the mother of Abishai, Joab, and Asahel. Abigail's husband was Zethar, who was a descendant of Ishmael, and their son was Amasa. The descendants of Hezron's son Caleb married Azubah, and their daughter was Zeraioth, the mother of Jesher, Shobab, and Ardon. After the death of Azubah, Caleb married Ephrath. Their son Hur was the father of Uri and the grandfather of Bezalel. When Hezron was 6 years old, he married the daughter of Machir, who settled the region of Gilead. Their son Segub was the father of Zair, who ruled 23 villages in the region of Gilead. Sometime later, the nations of Geshur and Aram captured 60 towns in that region, including the villages that belonged to Zair, as well as the town of Kenath and the nearby villages. Everyone from the region of Gilead was a descendant of Machir. After the death of Hezron, Caleb married Ephrath, his father's wife. Their son was Ashur, who later settled the town of Tekoa. The descendants of Jerahmeel. Jerahmeel, Hezron's eldest son, was the father of Ram, Bunah, Oren, Ozem, and Ahijah. Jerahmeel had a second wife, Atara, who gave birth to Onan. Ram was the father of Maaz, Zamin, and Ekar. Onam was the father of Shammai and Jadab. Shammai was the father of Nadab and Abishur. Abishur married Abihail, and their two sons were Aban and Molid. Nadab was the father of Seled and Apim. Seled had no children. Apim's son was Ishi, the father of Sheshan and the grandfather of Ahlai. Zada was the father of Zethar and Jonathan. Zethar had no children, but Jonathan had two sons, Peleth and Jaza. Sheshan had no sons, and so he let one of his daughters marry Jarha, his Egyptian slave. Their son was Attai, the father of Nathan and the grandfather of Zabad. Zabad's descendants included Ephli, Obed, Jehu, Azariah, Helez, Eliashah, Sismai, Shalom, Jechamiah, and Elishama. The descendants of Caleb. Caleb, Jerahmeel's brother, had the following descendants: Mesha, Zip, Maresha, Hebron, and Hebron's four sons, Korah, Tapua, Rechem, and Shema. Shema was the father of Raham and the grandfather of Jorkiam. Rechem was the father of Shammai, the grandfather of Maon, and the great-grandfather of Bethuzer. Ephah was one of Caleb's wives, and their sons were Haran, Moza, and Gazez. Haran named his son after his brother Gazez. Ephah was the daughter of Zadai, who was also the father of Regem, Jotham, Keshan, Pelet, and Shab. Makkah was another of Caleb's wives, and their sons were Sheber and Tirhana. Later, they had two more sons, Shab, the father of Madana, and Sheba, the father of Machbenah and Giba. Caleb's daughter was Aksa. All of these were Caleb's descendants. Hur, the eldest son of Caleb and Ephrath, had three sons, Shobal, Salma, and Hareph, who settled the town of Beth Gader. Shobal, who settled the town of Kiriath Jearim, was the ancestor of Haroeh, half of the Mehuhoth clan, and the clans that lived near Kiriath Jearim. They were the Ithrites, the Puthites, the Shumathites, and the Misharites. The Zorathites and the Eshtaolites were descendants of the Mishrites. Salma settled the town of Bethlehem and was the ancestor of the Netophathites, the people of Atroth Beth Joab, half of the Manahathites clan, and the Zoraites. Salma was also the ancestor of the clans in Jabeth that kept the court and government records. They were the Tirathites, the Shimeathites, and the Sukhathites. These clans were the descendants of Hamath the Kenite, who was also the ancestor of the Rechabites. Chapter 3 The descendants of King David. King David ruled from Hebron for 7 years and 6 months, and during that time he had 6 sons who were born in the following order: Ammon, Daniel, Absalom, Adoniah, Shephatiah, and Ithream. Ahinoam from Jezreel was the mother of Amnon. Abigail from Carmel was the mother of Daniel. Maacah, daughter of King Talmai of Geshur, was the mother of Absalom. Hakith was the mother of Adonijah. Abital was the mother of Shephatiah, and Eglah was the mother of Ithream. David then ruled from Jerusalem for 33 years, and during that time he had 13 more sons. His wife Bathsheba, daughter of Amiel, gave birth to Shema, Shobab, Nathan, and Solomon. David's other sons included Ibhar, Elishua, Eliphelet, Nogah, Nepheg, Zaphia, Elishama, Eliada, and Eliphelet. David's other wives also gave birth to sons. Tamar was his daughter. The descendants of King Solomon. Solomon's descendants included the following kings: Rehoboam, Abijah, Asa, Jehoshaphat, Jehoram, Ahaziah, Joash, Amaziah, Azariah, Jotham, Ahaz, Hezekiah, Manasseh, Ammon, and Josiah, and his 4 sons, Johanan, Jehoiakim, Zedekiah, and Jehoahaz. Jehoiakim was the father of Jehoiakim and Zedekiah. Jehoiakim, who was taken to Babylon as a prisoner, had 7 sons: Shealtiel, Malkiram, Pedaiah, Shenazar, Jechamiah, Hoshamar, and Nedabiah. Pedaiah had 2 sons, Zerubbabel and Shimei. Zerubbabel was the father of Meshullam, Hananiah, and Shelomith, their sister. He also had 5 other sons: Hashubah, Othel, Berechiah, Hashadiah, and Joshab Hesed. Hananiah's descendants were Pelathiah, Jeshaiah, Rephaiah, Arnan, Obadiah, and Shechaniah, the father of Shemaiah, and the grandfather of Hattush, Igal, Beriah, Neariah, and Shaphat. Neariah was the father of Elioenai, Hitzkiah, and Azrikam. Elioenai was the father of Hodaviah, Eliashib, Pelaiah, Akub, Johanan, Delaiah, and Anani.